welcome to our crash course. I'm Marie.
I'm Lila.
And today we're talking about Supreme Court case Marbury versus Madison.
This key court case establishes the power of judicial review and defines the Supreme Court's powers, something you need to know for your AP Gov final.
We'll start with an open letter, dive into the big concepts, jump into a thought bubble, and analyze the primary source before wrapping it up.
Let's take a look at this letter. It's addressed to the midnight appointees. The late president, Mr. Adams, having not long before his retirement from office made several appointments to civil offices holden during the will of the president, when so restricted in time as not to admit sufficient inquiry and consideration, the present president deems it proper that those appointments should be a subject of reconsideration and further inquiry. He considers it as of palpable justice that the officers who are to begin their course as agents of his administration should be persons on whom he has personal reliance for a faithful execution of his views. You will therefore be pleased to consider the appointment you have received as this never made, of which this early notice is given to prevent any derangement which that appointment may produce. This letter was written by Thomas Jefferson and essentially ignores the appointments that the previous president made so he could fill positions with his own supporters.
Wow, Marbury was severely screwed over by this letter. I mean, think about it. He got this big job, maybe his dream job, then a new boss comes along and fires him before he can even start.
That's right. It really demonstrates how the political parties at the time did whatever they could to have the most power and only handed important positions to people who supported their views.
Sincerely, Thomas Jefferson.
Okay, let's talk about it. What is Marbury v. Madison and how had it impacted the government?
Well, in the late 1790s and early 1800s, American politics were dominated by the Federalists, who were led by John Adams, and the Democratic Republicans, who were led by Thomas Jefferson. The election of 1800 saw a peaceful transition of power from the Federalists to the Democratic Republicans. Well, right before his presidency ended, Federalist President John Adams appointed William Marbury to the Supreme Court in order to keep some power for the Federalists. However, when Thomas Jefferson became president, he ordered Secretary of State James Madison to withhold Marbury's commission to the Supreme Court. Marbury sued Madison, arguing that Madison's refusal to deliver the commission was illegal and demanding a writ of mandamus to be issued for its delivery by the Judiciary Act of 1789.
The case went to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Justice John Marshall found that Marbury had the right to the commission based on the Judiciary Act of 1789, but that act that gives him the right to his commission is unconstitutional. That means that he did not get his commission in the end, and that portion of the Judiciary Act of 1789 that gave the courts the right to issue writs of mandamus was deemed unconstitutional. This is called judicial review.
This ruling asserted the Supreme Court's authority to declare acts of Congress unconstitutional. Now, the Supreme Court was officially the ultimate interpreter of the Constitution. Judicial review makes the judiciary branch equal to the other branches of government.
We keep talking about judicial review, but what is it? For that, let's go to the thought bubble.
Judicial review is a process under which a government's executive, legislative, or administrative actions are subject to review by the judiciary. In a judicial review, a court may invalidate laws, acts, or governmental actions that are incompatible with a higher authority.
One key example of judicial review in future application was the case Brown v. Board of Education. It declared that segregation in schools was unconstitutional. Judicial review allowed the court to evaluate the state precedent of segregation and strike it down. This landmark case had very important civil rights consequences, and it's because of judicial review that things landed the way they did.
Thanks, Thought Bubble.
Okay, let's get into a primary source.
This is Justice John Marshall's ruling. The judicial power of the United States is extended to all cases arising under the Constitution. Could it be the intention of those who gave us this power to say that, in using it, the Constitution should not be looked into? That a case arising under the Constitution should be decided without examining the instrument under which it arises? This is too extravagant to be maintained. In some cases, the Constitution must be looked into by the judges.
This basically outlines some of the logic that Marshall used. Because the judicial branch has authority over cases under constitutional law, it wouldn't make sense for these really important guidelines to just never be looked over. And also, looking at things on a case-by-case basis instead of just constitutional law makes more sense.
This is really important to the AP Gov course because it connects the theme of checks and balances, as it establishes a key power of the judicial branch to check legislative rulings.
In summary, Marbury v. Madison established the Supreme Court's power of judicial review, granting it the title of final interpreter of the Constitution. It established the importance and power of the judicial branch within the three branches of government.
You need to understand this case because it's one of the required cases for AP Gov curriculum, and essential when talking about the powers of the judicial branch of government.
Wow, that was a lot.
Sure was, Lila.
Thanks for watching our crash course. Hope it helps.
See you next time!